Rick, good to see you, man.
What's cracking, Matt? What's going on, man?
Lots
Yeah?
of stuff, yeah.
Lots.
Just
Franchising?
trying to take over the world.
Writing programs for the world?
Writing program for the world. How about you?
Yeah, same. Getting ready for representing Navy today, the Army-Navy games this weekend.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who's going to win?
Well, I think Navy had like 15 years in a row, and then Army's won the last 3. But I think Navy's heavily favored this year. Doesn't mean anything, though. It's like all bets are off for that game.
You've been to
you ever
that
watched
game,
it?
right? I have watched it. But
Yeah, I've been as well. Dude, the flyover for both, Army and Navy is amazing.
Pretty cool.
Coolest.
Yeah.
It's probably the coolest event I've ever been to.
Yeah, I'll have to check
Anybody
it
that's
out.
listening that hasn't ever been, if you ever get a chance to go, it's usually in Philadelphia. Sometimes it's in Baltimore, but it's an amazing sporting event.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out for sure. Are you ready for today's topic?
I am. What do you want to talk about?
Well, it's something we get asked a lot, and I know you get asked a lot personally. It's how and where do you find good trainers?
That is a question that we get a lot. So it's a great question. And why don't we split it up, right? Let's do today, talk about where to find trainers. And next time we could talk about like maybe the interview process and the onboarding. So we'll start with where to hire trainers. And I think before we even dig into that, philosophically, what are we looking for in a trainer? And I think you need to identify that before you then decide where you're going to find them, if that makes sense, right?
Sure.
Kind of like, hey, where do I find trainers? I'm like, well, what's your business structure like? So I talk about this ad nauseum, but it really goes back to having a systematic approach to your business. So when we were doing really well, but when we first opened, we had independent contractors. So we didn't have employees, which is a huge mistake and actually illegal in this day and age. But back then I would go out and try to find what I would essentially, describe as a unicorn these days, which is someone who could sell. They could manage their own book of business as far as like being professional, right? Showing up on time and scheduling clients and communicating with clients. Mm-hmm. They were technically sound trainers. They looked the part. They still had to be good team players because you had to work in close proximity. And that's a really hard person to find, almost impossible, unless you're going to bring them into your business and allow them to essentially be self-employed. And at the end of the day, that's illegal in most cases to do that. And you're also going to have to award that person with a level of compensation that really doesn't even make it worth having them in their business because your business isn't going to make any money. So in this day and age, I would say that you have to have a systematic approach to what you do, meaning it's your business, it's your risk, your money to start this entity. You need to set up a business system so that when you go to hire coaches, you're literally just filling a place on the team, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. You're not hiring another entrepreneur to run a business in your business. You're hiring someone to run your play. And so we use this adage a lot where, what we'll say is, hire the athlete, train the skill. And so in our case, when you have solid business systems, the athlete becomes the intangible things, right? Not necessarily the, master's degree in exercise physiology, which you and I both know we've had people come through in that have that educational background that couldn't train their way out of a paper bag, not because they lacked technical knowledge, because they lacked the knowledge or the emotional intelligence and how to apply it to everyday people or even athletes. Mm-hmm. So the great thing about having business systems is you go out and find the right athlete. And in our case, the right athlete is simple. It's like, well, do they look the part? It's important. Someone doesn't have to be super buff, but they also at least need to be on their own journey. Let's say that you work with a lot of fat loss clients and you have someone in who isn't necessarily super buff, but maybe they're down a significant amount of weight in their own journey, right? So who better to relate to weight loss clients as someone who's been successful and is maybe still on that path of weight loss? That's a relatable person. So they don't have to be super buff, but they at least have to be bought in, look the part, meaning they're actually buying in, that they believe in what they're selling. Right? Yep. They live it and don't just talk it. So that also, they're very relatable to people. Is this the type of person that you would like to have a beer with after the workout, as an example? Mm-hmm. Right? If it's no, then they're probably not going to be very successful. You and I both know, because you came from a large health club as well before you came to Alloy a million years ago, that there were people that worked in those environments that were terrible technical trainers. I mean, they did things that were in some ways, offensive. and could injure people, and maybe not. Maybe they stayed away from injuries, which would have been a huge plus. But because they looked good and they were magnetic and people just liked them, their book was full all the time with clients.
Well, the clients felt better when they left.
They did, and that's it. And so in a lot of ways, it's like, our main functions are you're going to hold people accountable, so they have to show up, and then you want to make them feel good when they're there. You had a great post about that the other day on your Instagram page about, don't forget that people have to enjoy their time with you. At the end of the day, it's just a workout. Mm-hmm. And so if I can get my workout from 15 different competitors, I'm going to go and work out with a person that makes me feel good. And as a consumer, I don't know that I have a little bit of knee valgus and these things. And you and I could argue that, okay, you should be able to handle those things if you're going to be in business, but there are coaches out there who aren't, and it doesn't hurt their ability to make money. So again, in a business structure, we're controlling that, right? We're controlling the programming, and we're controlling all the form and controlling the different levels of exercise at an enterprise level or at a club level, right? Then it makes it much easier for us to hire that athlete, bring them in, that same person that we've talked about, just, hey, here, just run the play and be you, right? And they're going to do really, really well. So examples is, I've been out to eat before with my wife, and we'll have someone young that's waiting on our table, and maybe they're a little bit sarcastic. They have a really quick sense of humor. They're kind of quick on their feet, almost like a bartender would be. And you have to be a little bit of that to train, certainly personal train people in a group setting. And maybe we have some great interactions. And they walk away from the table, and I can turn to my wife and say, "Look, that would be a great trainer in our club." And I could hire that person. And having a systematic approach would then allow me to get them from zero to hero in much less time, and not have this massive learning curve of 20 years. And if you're going out and hiring these trainers that have been in the industry 15, 20 years, you're going to get someone with a lot of experience, but it might be the wrong experience for you. And you're going to have to untrain all that before you get them up to speed with your processes. So I wanted to start with that because I think it's important. If you don't have a systemized approach, you're not looking for the same person that I'm looking for. So this is going to fall on, it's not going to fall on deaf ears, but it's not going to be applicable to you.
Sure. Well,
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you look? Where do you find these trainers?
Yep. So there's a couple of resources that we recommend and not just us, but all the other businesses that we work with, right? So the other training centers that we work with in our coaching groups that are Alloy licensees, what we see them being successful with. So again, it's this breadth of knowledge, right? The first one would be internships. And so I mean what I mean by that is an accredited college internship. And so then how do you go about that? Well, you approach a local university in your area. You're probably going to be looking at exercise science, right? Or something in that realm, physical therapy, something like that, as the degree or the department that you'll be applying to. And then you apply to that educational platform, whatever it is, whether it's an online school that's nearby or, whether it's a large university. We have both, right? A sort of a satellite campus. All those things will work, but you will need to apply to be an accredited intern provider for that university and get approved. Now, once you're approved, then you can run a true college internship, and you need to organize that. And I'll mention this guy now. His name's Justin Grinnell. He's a buddy of mine, and he's got essentially a playbook, if you will, for college internships. That's the best one that I've seen.
Yeah, we have a coach that went through it.
Yep, exactly. So one of our coaches now, it was funny because Justin is an amazing trainer. He writes for Muscle and Fitness. He's a really smart guy, a good business guy as well. But he is an Alloy guy, right? So he's running Alloy in his club and using our mechanisms, but he's running a massive internship. So he brings in an intern. He mostly works with Michigan State. He's right there next to those guys. And one of his interns ended up moving down here. So how cool is it that an intern in a club that was running Alloy ended up at the mothership of Alloy?
Yeah, that's really cool.
And Eric, he's the guy that if you guys watch any of our exercise videos or if you're a licensee, that's
why he moved so well.
He's the demonstrator because Justin taught him what's up. But so college internships are great. And what it does is even if you're not in a position to hire, it's a constant feeder for your system, right? And you've always got this young kind of learning environment, teaching environment or learning environment for them. And you've got this young crowd of folks coming through, and they bring a different energy to the club than the veteran trainers that have been there forever. So it's good. It's a really good way to do it. And it's a way to keep the pipeline full at all times, because you just never know. I mean, in our business, if you keep a trainer for 3 to 5 years, that's a long time. We've done in a previous podcast, our rivers and ponds scenario. And, to have a trainer that long, for more than 5 years, they may not even be that effective unless they just absolutely love it. And that's what they want to do forever,
Yeah, I would say we can really mold those interns as well because they're fresh. They don't really have a lot of industry experience. They're not bringing a whole bunch of baggage, and they haven't been in those scenarios you talked about earlier. So
it's funny. You hear things like, well, why don't we learn this in school? It's like, well, there's only so much. You have a lot of exercise science you have to learn. You have to learn, physiology, biology. There's a lot of things to learn that are great building blocks, but they don't teach you much about the business of training or how to treat people or how to run a session or how to structure program design or rigorous exercises. And that's the real world practical application of all the science that they've learned. So that's what we're teaching here. Mm-hmm. We're also teaching them business practices. What do we do for marketing, and how do we treat our clients? So what is client retention, and what metrics do we measure, so that when they're done with their internship, they do sign a non-compete or non-solicit before they start, so that they wouldn't then run down the street. It's not likely anyway, but that they wouldn't open a gym right next to ours, or share our secrets, if you will, with a competitor down the street. But for the most part, internships are a great way to keep the funnel full.
Absolutely.
For new employees. And it's also fun for you. And I don't know if any listeners have experienced this, but when you teach something that you've been doing, in my case, for almost 30 years, to someone who's never done it, and you see the joy and the amazement and the things that they get from learning what to you is just something that you can do in your sleep, it reminds you of how cool what we do really is, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I find that it's somewhat self-serving to teach interns because it makes you feel great.
Well, I mean, for me personally, I came in through a mentorship actually here, if you remember, and I came from a large club and stuff, and honestly, I mean, I think I learned more in here 2 weeks than I learned in my entire career before that.
I remember some of our conversations, like you saying, "Why haven't I done this?" or "Why is no one doing this stuff?" It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's not commonplace, but it's the same information's available to everyone. So that's internships, and go to the universities, apply, get an accredited internship. Now, we'll tell you that there's a lot of people that are typically in a large university, or we're in a bigger market in Atlanta. So the schools that we have are like in the city, if you will, and they have a lot of options, right? They could go do an internship with Coca-Cola and work as an exercise physiologist in their health department or whatever that is. But what you need to do is then, not only do you need to become an accredited provider, which puts you on the list, but you also are going to have to go down and advertise a little bit. So the universities that we work with, they'll have sort of internship day, and we can go down and speak to them about the opportunity that we have. And then when they find out we're in thousands of clubs worldwide and that we started in this one brick and mortar, and it's a compelling story, and it's worth them, instead of then going to work in a hospital setting and doing cardiac rehab, and that's not what they're interested in. A lot of them have aspirations of opening their own gym. Entrepreneurship's hot right now. It's sexy. So everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. And so that leads people to really want to come here, right? It's a much better option for them.
Sure.
We pay a small stipend as well. So but we pay it at the end, and it basically would cover like gas money and things like that.
I'd say the biggest thing out of the internships, honestly, is, if you hire somebody cold off the street, we'll talk about interviewing later, but you do a couple interviews, you don't really know until you see them out there with people, and you don't know how they're going to interact. You don't know if the clients are going to like them. So what better than having your interns, they're out on the floor talking to clients. You're going to know real quick by, they'd like them or not. And obviously you get to mold them along the way, but I don't think you can beat that.
No, you can't. There's no better way. I mean, you've got, 8 weeks with someone, sometimes more, right? Sometimes 12 weeks with someone in your business, 20 hours a week or so. It's like, you're going to learn everything you need to know about them. And the great thing for them as well, and this is a great selling point, is they get to learn whether or not it's something they want to do. We've had interns come through that I loved in the classroom setting or in the boardroom, or if we were talking about program design, but we're just too shy to be in front of people. And they were so thankful that they came here and had the ability to find that out, so that they would stay in school and go more into the research side of things, as opposed to trying to
physical therapists come through here as well.
Exactly. And said, hey, I could never do this, man. I'm just not social enough at where I'm exhausted after 2 hours of talking. It's like, this is not for you then, right? So internships are great. And then you mentioned another one, which is mentorships. So mentorships it's like an internship for an adult. So it's not an accredited college course. It's simply teaching someone who's in a different maybe career. Like maybe there's we've had a guy who was a math teacher, right? And really wanted to become a personal trainer. So started here, did a mentorship. That's 6 weeks long. It's 20 hours a week. We've considered charging for it in the past. And we have at times, and then we haven't at other times. So that would be on you guys whether or not you do that. I would say advantages to charging is people would take it more serious, but it does raise the level of expectation as well. So what I would say is I wouldn't bring on a someone to do a mentorship here and at our facility or facilities unless I thought that person might be a good hire.
Right.
So in other words, I'm not as interested in just teaching people randomly if it's not going towards their college education, unless I think there's some option for them to be here. And so if you start everyone, it's almost a great onboarding process. We'll talk about it in the next podcast, which is like, hey, bring them on for 6 weeks and see how it goes. And it also gives them a chance to see if they're a good fit or not. And you're doing it in almost like a temporary employment structure.
Well,
So
I will say, I mean, I did the mentorship and I did it on the premise I wasn't getting a job, and it did make a difference. I mean, you're going to act a little differently, and, showed that if you get somebody to do that, I mean, obviously it showed that I'll stay, can't get rid of me. I haven't left the building yet.
right. That's right. Still sleeping here.
But I mean, it was one of the best things I ever did. So, I mean, I wouldn't say only do it if you're going to hire them, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think we talked about it, but I mean, I would tell you now that there's probably some idea that you would be hired here. There was something there.
Whatever.
Right. I'm just saying that now.
Yeah, whatever.
Trying to make you feel
it's
good.
Like 10 years too late.
It was free help. Yeah. No, we knew, I knew bringing you in that you would be a potential hire. You wouldn't have done it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But to me, there was on my end. Right.
Right. Well, that's the way it should feel. Make you a little nervous. Always. And it's still that way. You don't know whether you're going to be here tomorrow, Matt. You never know.
I know.
So we got internships, which are accredited college internships. You got mentorships, which is a half internship and based on adults, and you can decide whether you want to charge or not. Just remember, if you're charging, do you want to be in the mentorship business? I really didn't want to be in that business, right? Because there's too many other outlets to coach people other than that. But it's a nice way to bring people in and teach them if you think they have some, especially if they have no industry experience at all, to bring them in. So those are two great ways and have been our number one, right? Our two number one ways to do it. Now, another avenue or another maybe pond to fish in for potential trainers is existing clients. And that's something that sometimes is surprising to people to hear that, like where you'd hire clients to be trainers. I'm like, yes, if you have someone in your business that fits the socioeconomic profile of your clientele, and they probably do if they've been a consistent client, you know them really well. You know a lot about their work ethic because in a physical setting where you're pushing people, you understand sort of their tolerance for hard work, right? So you've seen that already. Are they timely? Do they show up for their sessions? Are they motivated? And typically, if all those things are in line, that means they love the brand. And another great thing is that they only have been exposed to what you do. And they've normally been very successful with your processes and in your business, which is why they're there and why they're such huge fans, raving fans of your business already. So they make really good employees, especially some of those hard to fill part-time hours. We've had people here that were just these rock star clients. And people were kind of like drawn to them anyway. Maybe they weren't employed at the time just because they didn't have to work. And they would say, look, I love this. And we would approach them and say, hey, you should be a coach here. Yeah. You look the part, you're a huge fan of the brand, you represent us really well. And what do you think about coming on? And to a lot of people, we discount what maybe it means to be a trainer and a coach. From outside in, it looks really fun. And it's, you just go out in front of a bunch of people and do your thing and go home. Yeah, well, as we all know, and those of you listening, it's a little bit more work than that. But at the same time, it looks really fun. So it's not hard to attract someone to that position. So again, going back to having a systematic approach to your business allows you to then take a client who's well-rooted in your culture and your facility and bring them on as a coach. And then you put them through that same adult 6-week mentorship process, right? To get them upskilled as far as like form and how the programming works and how the whole system works. And then they're off and running. So I would say for us, that's been our second biggest source of trainers. And it's been a really good one. So those folks are typically very sticky.
Yeah, they're very bought in.
Very bought in, and they make really good coaches.
And a lot of times, some trainers have never experienced anything but training in their lives as part of a profession. We get people who've been high-level executives, and they're like, it's a total different world, and they want to come over. So they love it.
Well, a long time ago,
shorts every day.
Right. You get to wear sweatpants to work. This is amazing. Well, you think about it. You're in middle-level management. You're making, $100K a year, and that's good money. but you're sitting in a meeting and, it's just bullshit meeting after meeting. And someone's like, we got a fourth quarter numbers are looking off. And and you're just like, oh, for the love of God, like it's the 10th meeting you've had that week. Right, and you just want to light yourself on fire. If you go back and listen to my podcast with Rami, when he was on here, he said that, right? They went around the room and most of the executives in the room were in their 50s. And it was like, hey, if you had another shot at it, what would you do? And he was the only guy that was under 30. And most of them were like, oh, I'd be a gardener. I'd do this. I'd do that. Nobody wanted to do what they were doing. Yeah. And when it got to him, everyone's like, oh, you'd do fitness. And then he was like, you're right. And he looked at all these guys who he looked up to and was like, peace out, I'm out. And he went back to school and became a coach and just sold his gym, last year. So anyway, interesting story. So I would say that existing clients are a really good source, as well. And then lastly, you've got all your, well, not lastly, but third, you've got just any of your job listings, any of the websites that the job list. Haven't had as good success with that. We'll get into the mechanisms that can make that a bit easier in the next podcast in the actual interview process. But, you can go to Indeed, you can go to, there's a million of them, right? Yeah. And we've tried several, some we've had success with, some not. You get a lot of unqualified leads. And you don't want to throw out there that you have to have like an exercise science degree or something, because that's not true. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do that, it can often be seen as like something that anyone can do. Mm-hmm. They don't fully understand what's involved. So you get a lot. What is it? The odds are good, but the goods are odd, that kind of thing.
I will say, at one of our interviews one time from one of the sites, this woman came in and literally, it was a full-time position, literally came in. She's like, I can only work between 12 and 1. I mean, wow, what? Why are you here?
I want to work on my lunch break.
Yeah,
but I have to be dressed and back at work by 1.
Yeah, so I don't know.
So and those have their inherent challenges. Again, it's sort of like running a Facebook ad for free something, right? You're going to get a ton of leads, but they're not going to be that qualified. It's going to be the same thing on these platforms, but it's not a bad idea to fill up the top of the funnel. We'll talk in the next episode about maybe how to filter that a little bit so you don't spend so much time with a bunch of unqualified people, right? So there's that. And then, lastly would be, I would just say community outreach or maybe working even through your current trainers, right? So who do you know in the community that you might know? Maybe if you need part-time work at night, there's a high school coach somewhere that's got or firefighters or things like that, or friends of trainers. So it's not a bad idea to ask the coaches that you have, like if they have any friends that want to work here, because friends want to work with friends.
Right.
And if they're the type of person that is a stand-up person, if they bring someone in and they're going to vouch for them, it's going to give you a huge, leg up on knowing this person's, at least their character and what they're all about. So, and you can incentivize that too. I wouldn't advertise it as such. The true psychology says if you go to your team and say, hey, if you bring me someone that signs up as an employee, I'll pay you $500. They're going to be less apt to do it because they wouldn't do it for that reason, right? They would do it because they want to help someone. And that would be a nice thank you gift. But you can't go in with the carrot beforehand because that type of carrot doesn't work for intrinsic motivation.
You did that here. We hired when Suzanne came on.
Right.
And I didn't even know that there was money involved. And like one day he gave me $500. So I was like, this is great.
You just thought it was a bonus, right?
Well, I didn't even know.
You didn't even know you were supposed to work here. So how would you know? Well, you don't know anything. You just show up and somehow you get paid and you're like, I don't know. I just write programs.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that's the 4 different ways to hire a trainer. And then we'll wrap it up here. And this is based on feedback that I get from coaching a couple thousand clubs over time. A lot of people have this weird perception right now of the current job market and the way people work these days. And they throw out terms like millennials or this, or I don't know, man, it's just weird. So it's easy to get it in your mind that there aren't any good people out there, or no one's loyal, or I hire people and they ghost me on lunch break. Like, I hear these things all the time and I'm thinking, really? That happens to you a lot? And they're like, yeah, there's just no good people out there, man. It's bullshit. I can't get by to work hard. Nobody's loyal, blah, blah, blah. I'm like thinking, that doesn't sound like our place at all, right? So it goes back to, I was listening to Andy Stanley Leadership podcast, which if you guys don't listen to that, I'd recommend it. It's a great podcast, and the leadership one. And in the podcast, he was telling a story, and basically the overriding theme or the message of the story was this: are you the person that you're looking for is looking for? And of course, he's the king of taking an idea and branding it and making it sticky, right? So, well, that's odd. What does that mean? Well, I'll tell you in the context of dating what he was talking about. And he said, listen, there was a young lady and she was talking to her mom and she was telling her mom, I want to meet someone and I want to meet someone who's successful, who is, involved in their church, or that was just his podcast, that, likes to do outdoor activities, that does and list out this laundry list of things that she's looking for. And that's great to do that. But then her mom says to her, and this is coming from her mother, so it's probably going to hurt a little bit. She said, "Oh, honey, you're not the person that person is looking for," which is a punch to the gut, but it's a good reality check. And I'll say that about business. If you find that everyone that you hire is a dirtbag, everyone ghosts you at lunch when they're new hired, everyone steals from you.
Yeah.
You should probably start by looking in the mirror, because the people that you want to attract to your business, you're not attracting. And you know why? Because you're not the person that person is looking for. So the first thing to do would be to look at yourself in the mirror, look at your current culture. And if you're only attracting bad people, it starts with the person that you're looking at in the mirror. And you need to change that, change something about your culture, make better decisions, whatever that is, because whatever you're putting out is exactly what you're getting back. And so you need to change that. So it's always a fair question. If you're having a lot of problems with employees and culture and things like that, best place to start is look right in the mirror and fix your own shit, and then maybe straighten it out.
Got deep on that one. That was great.
Did I get deep?
That was awesome.
Are you tearing up a little bit?
A little bit.
Hey, well, let's come back next time so we don't keep it too long, and we'll do basically the full onboarding process. Sound good?
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.